Hello everybody out there, hopping on a couple of minutes early, so hopefully our distinguished guests can join us. Dr. Ann Martin, who is the Executive Director of the House Rabbit Society, and also a really, really cool lady, is going to join us today. She's quite the bonding expert, so we're going to wait till she logs on here, and then we'll get the party started. In the meantime, again, thanks to everybody for joining us. Sorry for wearing these stupid-looking earbuds, but I was told that they'll allow me to hear everybody better. Super excited to try something different. You know, Marie and I have been working on the Facebook Live for a lot of years now, and I've long wanted to integrate some other more expertise into these. And bonding is just such a common challenge and such a common theme that it's just a big opportunity. So I see Dr. Martin here. Let me see if I can get her in. So it just shows that she's watching. So how do let me see if I can click on her. Bear with me, guys. So Dr. Martin, you should be able to click add. Hopefully you can find that button and punch that, and then that'll pop up here so that I can log you in. So while Dr. Martin's getting that figured out, you guys did what you always do and have this amazing list of bonding questions. One thing that's super exciting for me is I know I'm going to learn as much as everybody else is today, because I get asked about bonding all the time, and to have an expert like Dr. Martin share her experience with us is really going to be great. So Dr. Martin, hopefully you can hear me. I'm still waiting for you to add on your screen, which should allow me to add you, and you can pop me an email if you need to. Technology, right, ladies and gentlemen? It will be well worth the wait, I can promise you that. Says the link is missing. Yep. So we're going to get Dr. Martin figured out, because you guys do not want to be stuck with me for a half an hour on bonding, but just because you know I'm going to do this, I did have to throw in one nutritional question, because that's my go-to. Let me find that question because it was a good one. So here it is. So this question came from Sarah Grace 826. Sarah asked, hello. Hi, Sarah. I have a 7-year-old rabbit who just recently started to not eat his Cecotropes, and he has lost a lot of weight. I brought him to my local vet, but she said that everything looks good. Could it be a diet that's too high in hay, or is it something more serious? So first of all, kudos to you for recognizing the importance of Cecotropes nutritionally, which you've all heard me harp on that. And obviously, when we start seeing that tie to actual weight loss, that's definitely a concern. So typically, Cecotropes are provided or basically produced because of dietary influences and obviously anatomy and physiology as links to microbiome, so the gut bacteria. And any one of those factors can absolutely have an impact. However, typically a diet that's too high in fiber alone is not going to be necessarily a root cause for that. So while it's great you take the munchkin into a local vet, I would strongly suggest that either you work with that vet to kind of help them dig a little deeper, or maybe see if there's another veterinarian that you could see. But at this stage in the game where we're seeing that change in fecal patterns and we're seeing that change in weight loss, we don't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. We want to dig into that. Personally, if you came to Nebraska, which I'd love to have you, but it's probably a drive, we'd be looking at doing some more diagnostics. Start that out with a complete fecal analysis, some abdominal radiographs. Let's look at the anatomical structures and likely even some blood work. Just really give us an overarching perspective of what's going on with that munchkin health-wise. Then link that to diet. And diet can sure be a factor, but unless you're feeding a diet that's really high in simple sugars or high in inappropriate treats and things like that, it's pretty unlikely that that's the primary cause to that. Now, if they did eat something they shouldn't have, that leads to dysbiosis. That can be certainly, part of the puzzle, but unfortunately I suspect that there's something a little bit more significantly going on there. So I would definitely dig deeper, talk with your vet. Maybe they'll do some blood work for you, but if they're not willing to really do anymore or not capable, it's probably time to shift gears and get to somebody with a little bit more expertise. So we're still trying to get this little connection issue worked out here. Hopefully we'll get it figured out in just a second. Still working on that, Marie. How do I get this back to the screen? Oh, I turn the camera around. Got it. There we go. So I don't see anything popping up there yet. Should that be showing up? I got my tech expert Marie here helping me out.
Hi everyone. thanks for your patience as we, she needs to, she's there. Just get that sorted.
All right, cool. So in the meantime, what I did is we had so many awesome questions about bonding. What we actually did, let me see, Dr. Martin's right here. She's not seeing the add function. So what I actually did is I tried to lump them together. Obviously, there's no way we could get through all of these dozens and dozens of questions, but there was a lot of commonalities, either with multi-sex bonding, groups and pairs, looking at some of those natural physical behaviors. So what I did is I kind of lumped those into categories, and I'm hopeful that each one of your questions will be represented in kind of one of those broader categories. Now again, we got all these early questions, which are great. We really love the people, and there's actually almost 90 of you, which is spectacular, that are joining us live. So we want to get to your questions as well. So even though I got all these questions here, do not hesitate for 1 minute to throw up another question live, and Maria will help us get to those. Some of the big buckets that we're going to look at is, and I can actually, to be honest with you, I'm going to kind of steal the show to start and answer this first question myself, because I came up with the question, and it's a big one, but I know Dr. Martin would trust me with this one. Do we really need to bond rabbits with another rabbit? And I get that question all the time. I've got a rabbit, he seems happy. Do I really need to get another rabbit? And I'm going to give you the blunt answer, and then let's talk a little bit more about it. The blunt answer is absolutely, or heck yes, or whatever other word you want to use. Rabbits are extremely social animals. And while the human-animal bond is an amazing thing, without a doubt, there is just no way for you and I to emulate that natural social, physical, emotional, mental bond and connection that rabbits can have with each other. So while I will challenge all of you to do the things that you can as a human, that interaction, that socialization, that interaction that facilitates that, you still have to remember you cannot emulate what they can do with another rabbit. So I'm a very, very big proponent, and I get asked all the time, like, hey, I'm thinking about getting my first rabbit, what should I be aware of? And my go-to response is, then you need to be thinking about getting your first rabbits, because honestly, the best thing you can do is introduce another rabbit to that environment and provide that bonding opportunity. Now, there are individuals just like you and I, right? And each individual animal has its own behaviors, its own traits. There are certain rabbits that just really don't ever seem to be interested in that, don't ever really seem to be able to facilitate that interaction. And that may be the case. I've had rabbits that live in happy, healthy homes, great nutrition, great moms and dads, and they've tried bonding over and over again, and the particular individual is just not going to have it. That being said, we still want to give them that interaction, just not direct. Another rabbit in the enclosure, or not in the enclosure, within the room, within the ecosystem. They can smell each other, they can hear each other. Sometimes they'll even groom each other through the cage, and even in neutral spaces they'll interact. But sometimes just that home habitat, that's just too much their space. But don't give up on that. Do not give up on the belief that rabbit bonding can happen. We're going to give you some awesome tips and tricks today once we get technology figured out that you guys can take home and really, really apply that stuff. I also get questions a lot about other species. You talk about guinea pigs, you talk about chinchillas, you talk about rats and mice, and it's always really important to understand natural behavior. Different animals in wild environments have different behaviors. Some species, say hedgehogs, for example, are naturally extremely solitary. They get together infrequently to do their little thing and make babies, but other than that, they kind of live their own lives. So if we understand the natural behavior, the natural social structure of these animals, and our goal as pet parents is always to emulate that, right? We're always trying to emulate nutrition, environmental enrichment, social structure. That'll help us to understand, is it important for us to bond that animal? But for the majority of animals, exotic companion mammals at least, rabbits and guinea pigs, chinchillas, rats, mice, hamsters, gerbils. Hamsters are a little bit on the edge, but all of those animals are going to really benefit, not just physically, not just mentally, but emotionally and socially, of having another cage mate that they're bonded to. Now, some animals like rabbits are more difficult to bond, and there's more effort that needs to go into that. Some animals, depending on their sex and their age, boom, they're ready to rock and roll. But understand your individual species before you bring them home, first and foremost, right? That always sets everybody up for success. But even if you've already got them home, dig a little deeper. Do your research. What's natural interaction of this species of hamster in the wild? Do they do well with the cage mate? Do they not? And then set yourself up for success before you bring that munchkin home. How are we going to introduce them to our environment? Do we need to quarantine them or isolate them for a period of time? Do we need to take them to the vet to get a good wellness exam or a fecal examination and make sure they're not bringing any parasites in? And then unfortunately in the crazy world that we live now, speaking specifically to rabbits, you got to keep in mind RHD. You know, if you live in an area where that virus is potentially prevalent, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, California, Texas, you know, those are all areas where you obviously want to take that extra step of precaution. Even if you're getting that new rabbit from a rescue or a reputable breeder, make sure you're taking that extra precaution to really keep those animals completely separated for a period of time, just because it's not worth taking the risk, right? It's just not worth it. So if you do your homework, you do your research, you understand your animal, you're going to set yourself up and them up for success, you know, without a doubt. So hopefully we're making some progress here, trying to get things figured out. I will try to not make you guys bear with me any longer. I will get to one more nutrition question that I had. I put this on the back burner, specifically if we had IT issues, but Sarah Jones asked me, Dr. Kohles, I have read a lot about treats online, but when I go to the supermarket, what I see offered doesn't align to what's recommended. What would you suggest? Well, I think the first thing, and many of you have heard me say this before, you know, how many rabbits nutritionally need treats to survive? Well, the easy animal is 0, right? Treats are not about nutrition. Treats are about the human-animal bond. And I'm not saying that to say that all treats are bad. They're not. But it's really important to strip away all the marketing baloney, strip away all of the it looks good on the packaging baloney, and really say to yourself, does the nutritional profile of this treat align to what I know rabbits need? Align to the fact that rabbits don't need simple sugar. Align to the fact that rabbits don't need artificial colors and artificial flavors, right? We know that they don't need those things. If that treat does not align to that nutritional profile, leave it on the shelf. It's not worth your money. And chances are, if you do buy it, you're feeding something that's nutritionally incorrect for the animal. Now, do I think that nobody should feed treats? You know, I don't believe that. I think what you have to do is educate yourself about the nutritional profile, and if you can find packaged treats that fit that nutritional profile, go for it, right? Use them in moderation, use them appropriate. I really like to connect them to a behavior so we're positively reinforcing something, but treats are a great way for you to connect with your munchkin. If you can't find treats that meet the nutritional profile that you know they should have, high fiber, low protein, no simple sugars, no artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, then look at what Mother Nature provides. I mean, that's truly the best treat. The dark leafy greens, red leaf, green leaf, bib lettuce. You know, you can even get into some of the fruits, small amounts of apple and small amounts of carrot and you know, any of those things in small amounts can be appropriate. Just again, strip away all the marketing baloney and really think about what is nutritionally correct for that animal. Excuse me, I bet that was horrible. So Marie and Dr. Martin are struggling and battling. I can see the look on Marie's face with how hard they're working. I appreciate everybody sticking around. And if for some reason we can't get this figured out, we will absolutely get this rescheduled, but I'm not ready to throw in the towel yet. So the next kind of big question that we had, you know, really regarding bonding, you know, really ties to specificity about different types. And that's one thing that I think many of you have probably experienced and are probably hoping to get some answers on, is there are so many different types and different approaches to bonding. And I think it's important that while Dr. Martin is going to give you the things that have really worked for her, you still have to understand that every situation and every animal is unique. So the more that you can kind of get it yourself exposed to, the different techniques that you can kind of bring into your home, more likely are that you're going to have success. Now, one of the more common questions that we got talks about, here's one right here, Marie, this might be it. No, I just said we got a question from, no, it just popped away. One of the more common questions that we get ties specifically to, you know, neutering. And the question that I've gotten a lot is, do you have to neuter your animals before you would bond them? Now, obviously, if you got a male and a female, that's not rocket science. Hopefully, I don't need to explain that one. But if you're looking at bonding a male with a male, you know, what is the potential interaction, pros and cons of having animals that are unfixed per se? The first thing that I'll tell you is an experience. There's two predominant reasons that I am such a big proponent of neutering males and spaying females. Obviously, one is the reproductive component, right? We don't need any more little munchkins out there than we already have, and rabbits are really good at making other rabbits. There's also the health and preventative wellness component of things. Many of you have probably heard me talk about the fact that the single most common cancer in female rabbits is cancer specifically of their reproductive tract, right? And that type of cancer in females over the age of 4 that are intact is very, very common. 75 to 80% of these animals will get a cancer specifically of their uterus and of their reproductive tract. By spaying them, we're obviously completely eliminating that. So we know about the benefits of no little offspring. We know about the benefits associated with, again, not reproductive disease, and males can get it as well. But when it comes to the behavioral components, the desire to reproduce and to be driven to reproduce, that's what animals were put on this earth to do. So when we neuter them and we remove not only that capability, but also the sex steroids and hormones that go along with that, there is without a doubt, in my opinion, a benefit or an increased likelihood of getting these animals to bond together. So if you have a munchkin at home that's spayed or neutered, you're thinking about bringing another munchkin home, and you're preparing yourself to think about that bonding process. If that new little one you're bringing home is not spayed or neutered, I would really think about your timing and say, how likely is it that I can get that animal surgery taken care of before I even bring him into their home environment? Or I pick them up from the rescue. If the rescue hasn't done it, we get that done, they recover at the rescue, and then I bring them home, so we're not introducing that stress later on. There is definitely an advantage to doing that preemptive to bringing them home, but even if you have them home, there's still an advantage to do that. All right, so we've just got an awesome group. There's almost 100 of you guys joining us live here, which is spectacular. I'm super duper apologetic that you're still stuck listening to me babble on about different things when we've got not only a much more intelligent bonding person, but she's a lot nicer than I am too, waiting in the wings. So Marie and her are still working on it. Hopefully they're going to get this figured out here in just a second. I'm going to try to search down here and see if I can facilitate their efforts. In the meantime, if anybody has any nutrition question, feel free to pop that up there. I can talk about nutrition all day long and hopefully give you guys some inputs there as well. Let me pop online here real quick. How we doing, Marie? Any luck?
Not quite yet. There.
Does anybody have any nutrition questions? All right, here's a great question that came in from Kristen Frost. And Kristen, thanks for joining us. She said, how often should guinea pigs' teeth be trimmed? Well, the right answer I want to give you is never. Because to be brutally honest with you, if we are feeding the right diets and the right forages, we shouldn't honestly ever have to trim those teeth at all. We know that the dentition of these guys constantly grow, right? Not only their front teeth, their incisors, but obviously their molars. If they're getting ample amounts of long-stranded, high-quality forage and they're sourced to facilitate that natural chewing motion, most of these animals don't necessarily need their teeth trimmed. Now, there are obviously reasons why that can occur. One, there are congenital defects. In a rare instance, guinea pigs are born with an abnormality that leads to a disruption in normal dentition. And in those instances, sometimes we do have to trim their teeth. Or if they're not fed an appropriate diet and they develop malocclusion, which especially in guinea pigs can be a challenge, the lower cheek teeth in guinea pigs actually grow lingually, right? So they go over the surface of the tongue. And if those teeth get too elongated, we need to trim them. And sometimes once that dental disease has already kind of been put in play and already started, even if we correct diet, we may have to adjust that. Now, how frequently, to your exact question, it really depends on the specific case. I've had numerous examples myself where they've had underlying dental disease, elongated incisors, maybe some spurs on their molar cheek teeth that we've gone in and corrected those, adjusted their diet, and then monitored, never ever having to go back in and do additional work. I've also had other cases where the dental disease is maybe more significant. Maybe we have to treat that in kind of different stages over time, or certainly if we do end up having to remove teeth or they lose teeth and we lose that direct contact, so the upper teeth interacting with the lower teeth, that interaction is what drives that wear and tear. If we remove one component of that and we remove that oppositional force, then absolutely we're going to get that tooth overgrown and we'll have to trim that more regularly. In some cases, if we have a damaged incisor or a dead incisor that we have to remove, it may even be something where you need to talk to your veterinarian about go ahead and removing that opposite tooth so that we don't have to continue to trim them over time. But I would really strongly suggest you dig into nutrition, look at that long-stranded forages, even look at some other chew items. Appropriate type of plant-based chew items, untreated woods, other courses of types of plant material. A lot of animals are really good at wanting to chew those. It's how they explore the world. And again, that additional wear and tear on top of those forages, that may just be enough to get us over the hump and not have to trim them any more than we have to. Certainly, if we need to, we need to. But anything we can do to decrease the frequency or to avoid having to do that, is certainly going to be advantageous. All right, I'm getting a look like maybe we're making some progress here. Hoping and praying. She's just not getting the link.
Yeah, she just can't seem to add for some reason.
So I saw a question pop up on here that was talking about different types of greens, and I saw somebody post up something about cilantro, and I'm not sure if you were asking if that was a good green or not. The key with any green, and I'm a cilantro lover, so don't let Micah Kohles influence you. Cilantro in appropriate amounts is fine. The biggest take home for me with greens is diversify, diversify, diversify. That's really what I want people to focus on. And just like you and I, rabbits and guinea pigs and chinchillas, they're going to say, Mom, that's the one. It's the only one I want. I'm going to push the other one to the side and pee on them so you'll give me more. Don't let them get away with that. You know, as a concentrate selector, we know they're going to pick out the things that taste good. We know they're going to pick out the things that they like. That's not just with pellets. And I know all of you know better than to feed seed mixes and muesli mixes, but don't forget, they'll do that same thing with their greens. Now, inevitably, they're going to do some of that on their own, but do everything you can to constantly offer new types. I always recommend offering one new type at a time, right? Making sure that we don't have one that causes a little bit of sensitivity, and then if they do well, continue to push that diversification, slowly introducing more over time. Many of you probably have gardens. I mean, you talk about the best locally sourced, easy access, controlling the environment. There's so many things in your gardens, or so many things that a lot of us frankly just throw away that can be absolutely repurposed and appropriate treats for these guys, you know, from time to time. Let me go back and try it again. There's Dr. Martin. She's saying, I'm sorry guys, and she's trying. You don't have to apologize. We know you're trying. Oh, I'm just bummed. We're going to keep working on this, guys. And again, like I said, I apologize. We actually just tested this out like a couple days ago, and it worked perfect. So I'm not quite sure what's going on. Let's blame it on COVID. How about that? All right, let me get to a couple of other questions here that I had kind of penciled in as backdrop. Kind of already got to that one. All right. This question kind of ties to bonding a little bit. I had it kind of as a more in-depth one for Dr. Martin, but I'll touch on it a little bit. So Grace Tomley asked a question about, is it okay to bond a rabbit with another animal? And her specific example, I think, was referencing a dog. So I think it's a really broad category, broad question, and I'll talk to it from kind of 30,000 foot. Hopefully we'll get Dr. Martin in here to be a little bit more specific. One of the things that's so cool about animals is they don't come into relationships with preconceived notions, right? They don't come in and say, I'm a dog, I see you're a rabbit, and I'm going to eat you, right? Now, there's innate behaviors that are ingrained. I'm a predator, you're a prey, we're wired to behave that way, and we need to keep those in mind. But I oftentimes see animals of different species, different orientations, you know, actually different nutritional needs, that in a wild environment would be absolutely at each other's throats trying not to get eaten. But in a captive environment where we've changed that entire ecosystem, have an amazing relationship. Now, one of the things that I always tell people is that anytime we're introducing new animals together, we need to take every iota of precautions. Not having any way to predispose or to kind of think about what could happen. So we don't want to take any potential risk. But over a period of time of sight and sound and aroma and howdying and, you know, neutral environments that we find, that for some reason, you know, Charlie the chinchilla and, you know, Peggy the poodle seem to really enjoy each other's company. I mean, that's as good as things get. Now, there are certain species that we do need to think about disease. There are diseases that can transmit from one animal to another animal, but the overall risk of that in a captive environment is honestly really quite low. If you've talked with your veterinarian, if your munchkins are up to date with vaccinations, if they're not coming and going and interacting with all kinds of other animals, truthfully, that's not anything I would worry about. So I personally am a very big believer of look at your individual situation. If your cockatoo and your guinea pig, for whatever reason, love to hang out with each other, it's a happy, healthy, naturally and safe interaction. I think that's just the best thing that we can do to kind of support that. But again, recognize that every new interaction can go one of two ways. And as owners, it's our job to do our research ahead of time and then to really set those two animals up for success if we possibly can. So I think I had another question pop up here that was kind of asking about fresh fruit versus dried fruit. Is one better? Leanne, thanks for that question. Really, again, a really good question as well. So there's a couple of angles to look at this through. I believe wholeheartedly that anytime we can provide foods in their natural format, in their natural structure, that's what these munchkins would be eating in the wild, right? I mean, how many rabbits wake up in the morning and crawl out of their burrow and say, where is my bale of dried Timothy hay? Zero. So we want to emulate that nutritional profile. So if we can get greens that are nice and fresh and luscious, not only are we getting all the benefit of that hydration, which is spectacular, but we're also getting all those plant-based nutrients, flavonoids and polyphenols and vitamins, especially the water-soluble vitamins. Things like vitamin A and vitamin C that naturally degrade when we dry plant material, they're going to be in that nice fresh forage. Now it's important to differentiate though greens, right, and fruits. Because when we start talking about fruits, not only do we get that hydration benefit, but we also get natural sugars. Now, some natural sugars are safe. I mean, a rabbit running around in the wild, if it came across a lush, ripe strawberry, there's no way it's going to say, oh, you look good, but that's too much sugar. The key is about how much. And so I'm a very, very big proponent of feeding fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, fresh greens. Even if you can cut fresh hay from your backyard, brome grass and other things, that's awesome for these guys. Be careful with the fruits. If you are going to use dried type appropriations, you really got to understand though what that process is. So when we look at hay, we dry sun-cured hay using Mother Nature and using sun. We don't add anything, we don't synthetically dry it, that's as natural as you can get. The trade-off of that though is that when you look at many of the fruits and vegetables that are available in a dried format, there's two predominant ways that they're dried. First is what we call drum dry, or kind of where we're using a process to dry them. And in many cases of drum drying, they're actually adding sugar to that process. Now, why do they do that? It accelerates the process of dehydration and removing water, which costs money. So they add sugar. Well, of course, that makes the process cheaper. It allows them to use lower quality ingredients, and many of these munchkins are like, sugar fruit, that sounds great. But we know nutritionally that's not where we want to be. So if you are going to feed things that you can buy over the counter that are dried fruits, we really want to be focused on freeze drying. That is a process that for the most part is not including the addition of any types of drying agents, no sugars. It's simply are just completely removing the moisture naturally, and what you're left with is nothing more than the actual plant material with the removal of the moisture. Moisture is still our benefit, and the more moisture we can get on board with these guys, the better. But again, if you're gonna get a dried one because it is more convenient, stick with the freeze dry. Definitely a better option. All right, so unfortunately, I think we're still battling, but I'll be honest with you, with 3 minutes left, we're probably not gonna get there. So I'm gonna answer one more question here. And again, I really apologize. We're gonna figure this out. What we're gonna try to do is we're gonna try to get on the line one more time. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to try to get her on one more time. We're going to end this feed real quick. We're going to try to log back in and see if we can get her connected. If that works, we'll try to get through a few more questions. If it doesn't, we will immediately get this figured out. We'll be educating you guys and getting information about part due a second time. But we appreciate your patience and apologize for the hassle. So we're going to log off real quick. Don't go anywhere. We're going to try to log back in, see if we can get this bugger figured out. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks. Finish.